YouTube. Good to see you guys. This is going to be an off-the-cuff response to a question that the Holy Spackle offered in relation to philosophy and its use, where the rubber hits the road, and how it changes my life. Or for those of us that find an interest in it, what is the good that it brings? I think she talked about hollow pies, that her pies essentially need filling. I don't like hollow pies either. I'm going to see if I can put the filling in your pie. Whoa. Oh my God. Yeah, I didn't mean that. I think the heart of her question was that philosophy tends to get used in a way to pwn other people, to humiliate them, to confuse them. And that definitely happens for sure. And, occasionally that can be fun. We all like to pwn the snake oil salesman from time to time. Who could I be talking about? Anyway, it's not important. But I think to Holy Spackle's point was that there are some people whom it only seems like it brings pwnage, and that in fact the philosophy doesn't seem to have for some people a good that it brings. And she wants to enjoy it, and she reads and enjoys philosophy, but wants to know someone who values it a lot and spends a lot of time in philosophy, as I do, what I get out of it. So let me first talk about, I'm just going to quickly cover kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking broadly about philosophy, and I'll get into specifics eventually. But when I'm talking about philosophy broadly, obviously there's philosophy of the mind, philosophy of language, philosophy of science, philosophy of religion, philosophy of mathematics, philosophy of emotions. Like there's philosophies for everything, right? There are fields of discourse or areas of discourse in philosophy for all sorts of things, for ethics, right? But when I'm talking broadly about philosophy, I'm talking about a principled critical examination, like an investigation into things, and that there is a quality about it such that you cast off your assumptions. You try to rinse yourself essentially of assumptions and get down to kind of the foundations, and find out why things are the way they are, what could be going on. When we talk about, for instance, right now I'm spending a lot of time in the philosophy of language and analyzing meaning and understanding and what fixes meaning. Are there rules? Is it private language? Is it public language? Like, what is language? What does it mean for you to be incorrect in a meaning? If you're using a term the way that you intend to, how can you be wrong about it? Questions like that. In spending a lot of time in this, I've had to cast off a lot of presuppositions I had formed that were laying there, that were intuitions I had. And you try to, when I talk about doing philosophy or philosophizing or undertaking a philosophical investigation, I am trying to remove my presuppositions, get to the point where all I have are my base assumptions that I need to reason, and then build back up and try to understand things. I'll often analogize it to map making, right? So I think it's a really good way to think about it, is that there is the world, which is the actual territory, and then there's our maps, which is our means of keeping track of our interactions and mapping out the relations between various landmarks, right? And so when I come into an area that I've frequented, maybe my map starts to get a little darker in the features that I've drawn on there. But maybe there are areas where I haven't frequented quite as much, and so my mark is a little bit of a lighter mark. But occasionally I can slip up and think that I can make a darker mark than I actually can. And when I revisit the area, I might find that, oh, you know what, that mark is way too dark for the amount of times I visited, that I haven't really appreciated or fully comprehended the relationships in this portion of the territory, and that I need to revise my map. Or maybe somebody comes around the bend and they've got a map, and they've mapped out some areas, and we start comparing landmarks, and they want to persuade me that my map's wrong in places. And so we can talk about why it is that I've drawn some of the features in the map the way that I have. And in getting a more accurate map, what that enables me to do is the next time I journey or travel, my travels are going to be more successful. They're going to be by a map that more faithfully represents the territory. And so that's the way that I see philosophy. Is I see it that I'm building out the map of the world, and I am erasing and making adjustments on landmarks. Sometimes maybe I've got some of them oriented correctly, but proportional or in relation to some larger features in the world that I have yet to come about. Maybe then I need to move a whole suite of things over a little bit because they're just slightly out of sync with where the river is or where a mountain is. I think it also helps me from attempting to draw far beyond my vision, far around the bend, the places that I haven't been, or maybe will never go, that maybe I'm a little less willing to draw marks at all, and have some amount of unknown in my map, rather than guessing at it or taking somebody's word for it whom I don't think has good reason. I don't have reason to think that they've been there either. So philosophy has a very practical quality for me in that this investigation sharpens my thinking, and Spackle talked about this a little bit. That she understands that it does that, but just to cover all the bases, when I then need to think about this exercise of and flexing my muscles and practicing constantly on these issues. Then when I get into real world issues, like I'm troubleshooting something at work, or I'm talking to my kids about some issue, or I'm thinking about getting involved in political discourse where I'm trying to persuade someone. Like I think an interesting aspect of the recent election is that you're finding people with really strong views who haven't maybe done the work to develop the reasons for why those are good things to think. They're going based on intuition or based on kind of gut instinct, or maybe they may associate with a certain party, or they have some moral intuitions that are coming to bear upon the situation, but they can't form a persuasive argument, or they can't kind of structure their thoughts in a way that even they can wrap their head around why is that a good thing? And so as a result, you see bad arguments on both sides. Like my own investigation sharpens me in a way where I don't get bamboozled by Donald Trump and some of the things that are said. But as well, I also don't. I've come to find that many of the liberal counter arguments aren't well thought out, and sometimes are based on poor reasons. Even though the conclusion may be something I agree with, it's not for the right reasons, or it's for poor reasons, or it's not persuasive. I see people talking past each other a lot, and simply only able to offer the objection without actually rendering the reasons for the objection. And so I think philosophy tends to help in my everyday thinking about those things, but also just in my relationships and everything. Okay, so that's kind of the practical uses. Now, in terms of more specific things, wait, let me cover one thing first. Is that I think there tends to be this notion that, especially because I'm involved in a lot of religious discussion, there tends to be a bit of a juxtaposition of philosophy and religion, or science and religion. Obviously, is one that gets juxtaposed a lot. But I think also philosophy and religion, and I think. To some degree, people think, well, if you don't have religion, you don't have these other things, that then these people go to philosophy and they figure it out for themselves. Well, that's true to a degree. I think the interesting thing about a religion, when I was a Christian, is that when I came to Christianity, I had then scripture and a set of doctrines and a church group and people I prayed with and people whom I studied the Bible with, and you have all of this structure that's founded hopefully around scripture and around church traditions and other things. But they tend to give you a scaffold upon which to build your belief set and to hang things off of. It's a set of hooks to hang your hats on, essentially. But you get to build off of this thing, and it kind of gives you a grounding, and then limits how far your scaffold can wander off. But I think it gives you kind of it's a little bit like the law. It's like we could just get rid of rules and laws and then just argue constantly about what we should be allowed to do. But instead we have kind of this rough and ready approximation of the law, that is what the law represents. And so we can have law enforcement and other things on these kind of this absolute standard that is written down that maybe doesn't fairly apply to all situations, but it gives us kind of a shorthand In truth, morality, I think, is much more pliable and dynamic than that, than the laws, right? That's why we can always find fault with the laws. We can always find exceptions, right? But I think the laws provide kind of a a common ground essentially, and I think that that's what religion provides. Is it provides a structure that people can work through their beliefs on. But when I left Christianity, I left it because I was persuaded it was no longer the case. But that didn't mean that I then had that I had a belief as to what is the case. Like I simply just didn't believe that I thought Christianity wasn't the case anymore. But that doesn't help me at all in forming opinions about what is the case. And so that's actually where this endeavor kind of began for me. And it's been many, many years. Like it's been, more intense the last 5 or 10 years, but it's been a good 15 years or so, maybe a little bit more since I was a Christian. So this process of philosophical investigation has helped to kind of ground and give me some framework outside of religion, an organized religion or a scripture or a holy book, by which to understand the world and to make sense of it and to build it out. And I think that's actually the proper thing to do. And interestingly, I think there are theists who do this as well. So what I'd say is that even though we can kind of talk about religion and philosophy in that way, I think philosophy is practiced by theists. I think, and we have some in our community who quite value it. And I think that their arguments tend to be more persuasive. I think they get more. I think they get a richer quality out of their beliefs. And there's a long tradition of theologians who did philosophy. Right? Obviously, the people believed in God for a very long time, and we're still doing philosophy. Right? So I think philosophy is not dichotomous to religion. I think they can go hand in hand, and they can kind of you can be a theist or be religious and have philosophy do a lot of work for you. And like I said, I think we have some individuals in our community who have it that way. So I just wanted to kind of deal with that notion of philosophy and religion. I think that's anyway. I've said enough about that. So what about where the rubber meets the road for me? So earlier, I think in January, I posted that I'd read On the Shortness of Life by Seneca, the Younger. It was around the time of Christ, actually. He was in the 1st century AD. He was alive in the 1st century AD. And he was in exile, and he wrote, he was exiled by Nero, who had gone crazy. And in exile, wrote to his mother, but he also wrote some essays. I think he was credited with the essay. I think I've talked about this before, but and I recorded a video on the shortness of life, and that really gave me a good framework by which to. That was a Stoic text about how to view life and how to get the most out of life, and how to. I think that was an important one for me as I'm going through empty nest with my kids going off to college and going to come into the middle of my life. I had kind of work uncertainty with our new takeover by Universal. DreamWorks was bought out by Universal. So I had a lot of things going on, and that text actually helped to give me some perspective and go, well, I can set up these. I can either let life pass me by and not live my life, or I can live it to the full. And at the end of it, be quite satisfied with the life that I've had. And so the basic premise of the book is that life is not short. It's long if you know how to live it, and you know how to take advantage of each moment. So, but that was a pretty practical solution case. I think as well my thinking on morality. Actually, I think my moral notions are much, much stronger now than when I was a Christian. I'm a moral realist. I'm an objectivist. I view language and intentionality and morality kind of all together in this naturalist framework. And I think it actually helps guide me quite a bit. And I practice virtue ethics, which I think is a good path to giving an approximate structure for how to live a full life and how to have a rich, virtuous life, a life filled with a richness, a rich quality. So very much religion, oh my gosh. My investigation into morality has informed my opinions quite a bit. And I think I'm constantly evaluating and questioning my moral notions, but I think that I have a better understanding of what it is we're talking about when we talk about morality. Maybe I'll do some. I'm hoping to do some videos. I've said this for a long time, but I actually might get to it pretty soon here. So there are a lot of practical things. I think also my notions on determinism and compatibilism over libertarian contracausal free will. I think I've said it before that I think I have a more compassionate view. I think vengeance is immoral. I think vainglory is immoral. I think that it motivates me to act. I have at the end of my free will video, I think the last couple of minutes, I think I made a strong case for philosophy actually informing one's life and your attitude towards it, and being someone who gets out and does things for others. I think actually, contrary to popular belief, I actually think a view with determinism plugged in actually makes you realize that you can affect change. That it actually makes me more optimistic that I can actually change the world around me, and I can impact it, and I can manipulate it, and I can change the circumstances of others through it. That it is not simply up to them, but actually we can do things to help each other and cause things to change. So anyway, I thought that video actually summed it up pretty well. And I think beyond kind of these specific examples, and maybe I'll try to think of some more. Maybe I can offer some in text. But I think these are definitely things that are valuable. But I think as well, I see philosophy as making life richer. It gives me maybe it's analogous to, say, like if I went to the Getty and I see this piece of this woman plowing in a field, doing some labor, and I enjoy this piece of art for a while, but then I do some investigation and I find out that in fact this piece was done in the late 19th century, and it relates the plight of serfs, and that there's actually a lot of political meaning behind this painting. It starts to open it up on new levels to me, and starts to make me appreciate it in new lights, and it gives it a richness. And certainly, I think philosophy and philosophical investigation into things, into the things we take for granted, gives me a much richer quality. It makes me look at the world differently. It makes me turn things just a little bit differently. So that I'm seeing the world in a new way, and I can kind of turn it this way and that way and see things differently. And I think that just makes life, it adds dimensions to life. It makes it much richer. A good example would be like when I was looking into emotions, and I talked about fictional characters, and the notion that like I can get worked up and cry for a character on screen that I'm watching. I can feel for their pain. I project into their situation. But at the same time, when a fight breaks out and there's gun bullets flying all over the place, I'm never concerned about my safety as I'm sitting there. And so what's interesting is that there are different aspects of fictional tales that affect us in different ways. I have a video, I think, on that as well. That was an off-the-cuff one that I did. But that adds a richness to me as I'm watching TV and think about things, is that I notice these things, and it makes me curious as to why they are. And it kind of it gives life a deeper depth, So hopefully that helps. I think it just enriches my life. And I think that the pwnage is not unfortunate. I actually think I had said to my friend Helena Handbasket the other day that I think some of this some of this philosophical pwnage essentially comes into the realm of presuppositionalism, where the investment in rending the other argument makes one blind to what you're actually doing, and what the actual reasons are behind your argument, and it gives you an investment in the argument that I think is unhealthy. It adds a value that, for instance, the presuppositional argument can bamboozle a lot of people and can make them look silly. But if you were to attribute if you were to confer on it some value based on that, that would be unfortunate, because I don't think that the value in confusing people, or the ability for it to confuse people, I don't think that recommends the belief. I don't think that that makes it. It doesn't vindicate or add to it doesn't affirm the veracity of the belief or the argument. It simply means that you're able to attack someone in a way where they couldn't deal with your argument, and that could happen for a number of reasons beyond it being true. So anyway, I think that type of attitude and behavior is unfortunate. I try not to get involved in that too much myself. When I get involved with Trey Jadlow, even when I make videos about him, I'm generally trying to bring attention to an issue that I think I want more people to talk about. I'm not simply looking to to humiliate him, but rather I've said he's the clickbait for my videos, in that I can get people to think about a issue and potentially think about things differently, and maybe prevent people from being bamboozled in the future by it. But it isn't merely to humiliate him or make him look silly or whatever. That just kind of happens by accident. Oh, I know. I'm so sorry. I'm not really. But anyway, hopefully all this helps. I find it very helpful. Philosophy has really made my life rich. It sharpens my mind. It's certainly helped my family in being able to think calmly about things. It helps my work, helps how I supervise people. It has a tremendous value, I think, because it makes me a critical thinker who tries to be principled and not arbitrary in how he approaches problems. I'm much better off having this as an interest, and I meet wonderful people who are really sharp and who humble me. And generally, I find some just really wonderful people. I feel like people who are tuned in the right sense with philosophy, I think it's a really humbling experience. I think it actually has I think on the whole, generally, I think it makes people much more sympathetic and appreciative of how things are and how difficult this life is to work out. Anyway, it's been a long video. Cheers, everyone. I think I said everything I needed to say or wanted to say, and I'll talk to you all again later. Bye-bye.